So in this video, we're going to be talking about something slightly different. It's a team in non-league who are not only one of the most important teams in non-league, but one of the most important teams in the world for football overall. This team have been largely credited as responsible for popularising football around the world. And in this video, we're going to be learning about why they're so significant, why they are only in the 7th tier of English football, and why they don't pay their players, as well as why they're so key to Brazilian football. Before the video starts, this video is sponsored by OneFootball. Now you can stay up to date with football in Brazil using this app as well as many other countries. Loads of different information. The Brazilian League is just about to start. The Brazilian League is not covered in as much depth on a lot of different apps, so this is quite a good one to find out about this league. If you want to download the app, the link is in the top line of the description. By the way, Corinthian Casuals was formed in 1939 following the merger of two leading amateur clubs, Corinthian and Casuals. Out of those two, Corinthian were the most significant, and they were founded back in 1882. The Assistant Secretary of the FA at the time, Nicholas Lane Jackson, was frustrated that when England played against Scotland at an international level, Scotland kept winning, and he felt that creating a club full of players that were the best in the country, playing them all together for their club, and then allowing them to go and play internationally together would mean they would have better chemistry, and that would make English football better overall on an international scale. So he sat down with the best players that he knew, created this team. Now the game was still fully amateur at this point, and there weren't actually that many clubs that did exist, but Nicholas Lane Jackson wanted to ensure that these players weren't disrupted in playing for their teams that they played for on a Saturday, so he created this team that would play all their matches on a Wednesday. They'd only play friendly matches, and they were actually originally going to be called Wednesday Club before the name Corinthian was mentioned. As a result of Corinthian being founded, England actually managed to go on and be a lot more successful. On two different occasions, Corinthian players made up the entirety of the English national team starting 11, which is the only team to have ever done this in the history of the English national team. And the club promoted Corinthian spirit, which is all about fair play and sportsmanship. They also championed the ideals of amateurism, which is just about playing football for the love of the game. Now they did not want to be associated with professional football whatsoever. When the game was professionalised, they didn't want to take part in any leagues or cups. They only ever played in friendlies. And the only game that could be classed as competitive was when they played the winners of the FA Cup from the previous season every year. Now, this game is essentially a predecessor of the Community Shield, which still runs today. They also had some pretty fascinating views on penalties. Now, they actually said that as far as they are concerned, a gentleman will never commit a deliberate foul on an opponent. So, if a penalty was awarded against Corinthians, their goalkeeper would stand aside, lean languidly on the goalpost, and watch the ball being kicked into his own net. If Corinthians themselves won a penalty, their captain took a short run up and gave the ball a jolly good whack, chipping it over the crossbar. And this sort of thing literally, nowadays in football, is gone from that end of the scale to the total polar opposite. Players will do whatever they possibly can to win a penalty. Players will dive, players will try and con the ref into giving them a penalty, because that sportsmanship aspect of football is so far reduced compared to what the Corinthian spirit entails. Now the Corinthians back in their day were the first real superstars of football. Whenever a team wanted to draw a big crowd in, they'd basically arrange a friendly against Corinthians, because people just wanted to go and see them play because they had an attractive style of football, and their sportsmanship as well was very popular back in that time. Corinthian actually handed out Manchester United's biggest ever defeat, beating them 11-3 in 1904, but this was coming towards the end of that real successful period of Corinthian as a football club. Because of the rising amount of professionalism within the game at the time, it made it more difficult for the amateur clubs to succeed. And one of Corinthians' big lasting legacies is the fact that Real Madrid play in white, and this is because of the Corinthians also playing in white. So Real Madrid took inspiration from the Corinthians and have now gone on to become arguably the biggest football club in the world. However, their biggest legacy were their tours of the world. Now, due to the increase in professionalism, as I've mentioned, they had to basically change what they wanted to do as a football club and change what they wanted to accomplish. So they became football missionaries. They travelled around the world to the likes of South Africa, North America and Europe. They were all extensively covered by these tours, and that is a huge part of the success of football to this day, because of those foundations that were laid by the Corinthians. The most famous tours saw them go to Brazil, and in 1910 they became so popular in Sao Paulo that they actually named a club after them, calling them Corinthians. Now this club has actually grown to be one of the biggest clubs in Brazil, winning the World Club Championship in 2012. However, one of their subsequent trips to Brazil in 1914 would be their last ever tour of this kind. They arrived in Brazil and found out about the outbreak of the First World War, so immediately turned around and headed back to the UK so that the players and staff could fulfill their duties to the army. Tragically, over 100 current and former Corinthian players were lost in the First World War. All of these players' names are mentioned on the memorial at Corinthian Casuals' home ground, King George's Field, which is in Tolworth in South London. After struggling to progress and keep themselves as relevant as they once were, Corinthians started to merge with another amateur team called Casuals in 1939. Casuals were formed in 1883 and had also been successful as an amateur club like Corinthians were, but unlike them, they had actually competed in various cup competitions previously. So while they were still promoting amateurism, there were slight differences in these two clubs' histories. Casuals were also responsible for the current kit of Corinthian Casuals, which is the pink and chocolate colours. In the 1988-89 season, Corinthian Casuals toured Brazil and played in a match against Corinthians. Socrates played for both teams, which was one of the most famous days in Corinthian Casuals' history, and they actually returned to Brazil to play against Corinthians once again in 2015. However, the Brazilian club won this game 3-0 in front of 26,000 fans. Again, a huge day for Corinthian Casuals, and something that non-league clubs in England certainly don't get to experience very often. Fast forward to the present day, Corinthian Casuals are currently the leading amateur club in English football. They got promoted to the Bostik League Premier Division last season via the playoffs in the 8th tier, which was a huge success considering that they're playing in a semi-professional league in that season and are now in an even more semi-professional league. This basically meaning that it's even more difficult for them to attract players because they're still not paying their players. They all play for free, and that being in a semi-professional league where players are expected to be paid will instantly make it a big challenge. However, to some players, that history, that legacy, and that Corinthian spirit is more important than being paid money, which is a really refreshing thing in modern day football. Because even at non-league level, players will still want to go to a club where they can earn the most money. Despite non-league football being less saturated with money, there is still a lot of money in non-league football, and players will still want to go, you know, like anyone will in any job, to the place that's going to pay them the most money in most circumstances anyway. The club are currently in the bottom half of the table, but are nice and clear of the relegation zone, so it looks like they're going to be staying in the 7th tier for another season, which is great to see. However, attendance-wise, gone are those days in the early 1900s where they had huge attendances and were used to draw in big crowds. The club currently only has an average attendances of around about 290 for the current season, which is around about 16th highest in their league. The stadium only holds 2,000 people, so even if they wanted big crowds, they wouldn't be able to do that. Interestingly, there are actually a few Brazilian fans who come over every year to Corinthian Casuals. Many of their fans are Corinthians in Brazil, and they want to make that pilgrimage over to watch Corinthian Casuals because they know about the history of the founding of their club. And it's great to see that there is that link between non-league football in England, 7th tier football, and one of the biggest clubs in Brazil. So it's great to see that legacy being carried on and the club still going. Yes, it's in a slightly different form, in the form of Corinthian Casuals rather than just Corinthians. And can they actually improve and get up to the 6th tier in a couple of years' time? Do you think it can happen? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to hit the like button and click subscribe as well. We're trying to get to 15,000 subscribers by the end of the season. If you'd help me get there, that'd be absolutely awesome. And yeah, I hope to see you in this video. And thanks for watching.